Morning everyone, my name is Michelle. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It's Friday morning, so I'm continuing the coverage on the Idaho 4 murders today, and this video you can kind of consider it a follow-on of sorts from yesterday's video where I talked about my concerns that this killer could do this again. So we're going to get into that. It really does concern me that this could be a budding serial killer. If they're not already, then this is their first killing experience of humans. I think they've killed animals before, if they've never murdered a human before. But every serial killer begins their career with a first time. But first, I want to be a little bit positive and say sometimes killers who've committed horrendous acts actually confess. And I want to play you this little clip. It was posted on the Manchester Evening News Twitter page. And this is someone called Damien Bendel, who's 32, who's been jailed for life for killing 4 people, bludgeoned them to death with a claw hammer. And it's unusual in the UK for somebody to be jailed for life, a whole life tariff, with no possibility of parole. But that's exactly what's happened to Damien Bendel. So let's watch this. It's just a minute long.
Right, stand here. Stay here.
Right,
So,
we told you, I know what's going to happen to you now, mate.
Well, I know it's going to happen to the prison, obviously.
Yeah. Why, what have you done? You done something to anyone else?
Yeah.
What have you done?
Murdered 4 people.
So he confessed to a police officer there that he murdered 4 people. But who? Bendel was given a whole life order at Derby Crown Court for murdering his then partner Terry Harris, along with her 2 children, John Paul and Lacey Bennett, and Lacey's friend Connie Gent. The court heard how Bendel, 32, used a claw hammer to bludgeon his 4 victims to death. And then he raped 11-year-old Lacey as she lay dying. What an absolute rotter. The murders took place at the home Bendel and Harris shared in Derbyshire last year. Bendel called 999 the next morning, informing them that he had committed the murders.
Basically, I need the police and the ambulance and that because I've killed 4 people.
Okay, just hold the line.
Justice Mr. Nigel Sweeney Casey sentenced Bendel to a rare whole life order, meaning he will be behind bars for the rest of his life with no possibility of parole. And good riddance to that man. So I don't know the specific circumstances in which Damien Bendel decided to claw hammer to death 4 people, including 3 children. I don't know what possessed him to do that, but at least he came down to earth and he confessed. And best case scenario, what we can hope for in the Idaho 4 murders is that the killer has a similar level of remorse and the guilt eats away at him and eventually he will confess. However, as I said yesterday, I'm not sure that that's going to happen in this case. I think this killer enjoyed it too much. I think the hate that fueled it was the catalyst. In hate crimes, the thing is, they feel justified. They feel that they've done the world a good service. In whatever warped level of thinking they've got, they continue to think that. So, although it's possible that this guy will have a change of heart and will confess at some point in the future, we absolutely cannot bank on it. And that's why I think all the little signs that people might pick up on, that somebody who shares their life with this person might pick up on, that person who's living with this killer, whether it's a parent, a friend, a relative, has to be strong and come forward and tell the police what they know. Because the police don't seem to have any clue at this moment in time. Now, last night, Brian Entin for News Nation interviewed the police chief, James Fry. He said, we need people to be vigilant. We need people to pay attention because we are not sure exactly where the individual is. So let's play you a few seconds.
And I know there's a lot you can't talk about, but can you tell us whether you're zeroing in on one or two people at this point?
Like we've said through the whole investigation, there's things we have to keep for the integrity of the case, and we're going to continue with that. We are interviewing a lot of people, and we're gathering a lot of information, and we're putting that puzzle together, and we're painting a picture, and we're trying to put that all together.
I've sort of thought about this, Chief. The fact that you've got so many resources there in the FBI and technology and the resources from the feds, should we assume that this was almost like a professional who knew what they were doing? Because it seems like if this was just some college kid, surely that person would have been tracked down by now.
So I think there's some misconception out there with how we operate here in Moscow. We've called in ATF in the past. We've called in the FBI in the past on many of these big cases because they have resources that we don't. And we want to have the best investigators there. That's why we call in the state police from the very beginning of these as well. So we've always done those type of investigations with the help of our federal partners as well as our state partners.
I let that run on a little bit there because did you notice that James Fry didn't answer Brian's question? Brian said if this was just some college kid, wouldn't they have been caught by now? Do you think this is a professional? And he didn't answer the question. So I thought that was interesting. But I'll have a go at answering that question for Brian. And as I said yesterday, I don't think this is a professional in that it's somebody who was paid to do a job or somebody who did the job for prestige, on behalf of someone else. I think if this was a professional, they wouldn't have used a knife. They'd have used a gun. They'd have made it as risk-free as possible for themselves. The thing with a knife is that the knife can slip. The perpetrator can cut themselves even through clothing or gloves, that they're using so that they don't drop skin cells or they don't put fingerprints all over the house. But if they cut themselves on that knife, however proficient they might be using a knife, there's always that possibility. Once there's blood, it's slippery. The victims are wriggling. The victims want to get away. There's always the chance that a victim will overpower the assailant. And with a knife attack being so up close and personal, there's always that chance, there's that risk. So I think if this was a professional, they would have used a gun. Even if there was a noise involved, they would have used a gun because that's as risk-free as it can be when you're going into someone else's house and you don't quite know who's going to be there. Ethan perhaps was a surprise to that person, unless this is somebody who was specifically targeting Ethan and Xana because of Ethan's involvement with the Sigma Chi fraternity. Could be someone from the frat house. I talked about that a couple of times now. And Ethan being there, that was the purpose of doing it that night, because he was there and he wasn't at the frat house. Some college kid. I think it could be a college kid. I really do think it could be a college kid who's really planned this really well. But the fact that it's been planned really well and these targets have been chosen, whether or not this is a college kid or someone else from the local area who is doing it through hate, my concern is that hate. My concern is that this was a hate crime, but also that this was a thrill kill, that this person enjoyed it. And it's that enjoyment teamed with that hate that makes this person very, very dangerous. And I think if this person isn't caught, the chances of them doing it again is very strong, in my opinion. So I want to read you something, and I'll leave a link to this in the description box so you can read it yourself. I'm not going to read it all word for word. But this comes from, it's a site called cyberstruggle.org. It's the psychology component that I'm interested in here. And this is 7 psychological phases of serial killers. Now, you've got some pictures here that some of you will recognise these guys. These are some of the most notorious serial killers that we've ever seen, unfortunately. that have made it through life and managed to take the lives of numerous people in horrendous ways. But not all serial killers are like these guys. So I want to caveat what I'm going to say with not all serial killers are moulded from the same cloth. If you think about serial killers like Nurse Beverly Allett from the UK, if you think about serial killers like Dr. Harold Shipman, also from the UK, they're very different types of serial killers than are, for example, Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, who each had their own motives for doing this. I did a long members live on Jeffrey Dahmer a few weeks ago. I don't think Jeffrey Dahmer was a psychopath. A lot of people do. I think he was a very different type of killer than, for example, Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy. And they're different again from serial killers like Dr. Harold Shipman. So not all serial killers are moulded from the same cloth. However, there are phases that I think we can loosely talk through, and we can loosely say these phases could well fit a range of different types of serial killers. So this research goes back to 1988 when psychologist Joel Norris, after 500 interviews, so analysed 500 interviews, revealed his work based on the fact that serial killers undergo 7 psychological stages. And in the beginning, it makes it difficult to detect the potential criminal tendency in these early phases. Now, remember that every serial killer has their first time. So let's think about the killer of the Idaho 4 being this person's first time. What did they go through immediately before? What did they go through immediately after? And what are the chances of them doing it again, and when? Because there's always a when. When are they going to do it? Are they planning their next murder right now? Well, it's possible. But many killers go through a long time in planning. They actually enjoy the planning as much as they enjoy the murders. It's like the thrill of the chase kind of thing. Some will go years between kills. And what tends to happen, once a serial killer's got away with it for a number of times, the killings get more and more frequent because they become addicted to the killing, to the planning, to the thrill of it all. And if they're fueled by hate as well, then that's going to spur them on. So I'm in no doubt that this person will kill again if they're not caught. But when? It could be next month. It could be in 2 years. We just don't know. We can't predict that. But let's read through these phases. So first of all, the aura phase. In the aura phase, the person begins to put a distance between himself and social relationships. To a certain extent, he begins to drift away from reality. Sometimes this situation can go unnoticed by family and friends and continues for an unpredictable short or long time. They begin to fantasize, and those thoughts begin to take over. So if you are somebody who suspects someone in your life, before the killings, did they go through a change? Did they go through a phase where they detached themselves a little bit or obsessed a little bit over certain details? Think about it. If their killings are of a sexual nature, their fantasies may be very private, but there may be other signs that you see a change in this person. They may intensify their use of alcohol or drugs or something else that can be detectable by the people closest to that person. And then phase 2 is the trolling phase, which involves the process of forming the idea about the victims, choosing the victims. Usually, killers go through, in this case serial killers, go through the process of searching for victims where and when they feel comfortable. Serial killers tend to start in their local area. Some serial killers broaden their reach as their career progresses. Some don't. Some stick very local. That can be their downfall because, a profile is developed about this person and it's easier to catch them. It's easier to catch somebody who stays local than it is somebody like Israel Keys, who literally killed all over the United States. Very difficult then to tie different murders together. However, there's also a tendency to determine where they will commit the crime and how they're going to deal with the bodies. Well, in the Idaho 4 case, they just left the bodies there. They didn't conceal that killing, which is also interesting, that they left a mess. They left them all and made their getaway. Not all killers do that, which leads me to believe that there's not planning about what to do afterwards other than to get away. Now, whether that was purposeful or not, I don't know. I can't say. And then 3, flirting phase. The killer is focused on gaining the trust of his victim. This doesn't happen in all cases, but it very often does. In Dr. Harold Shipman, who's a very different type of serial killer to someone like Jeffrey Dahmer, gained the trust of his patients. Jeffrey Dahmer gained the trust of the people that he took home, who thought they were going for sexual relations and nothing more. So did our killer, the Idaho 4, did he gain their trust? Did he know them already? I think probably yes. Typically, this phase is used by more daring, planned and socially developed killers. The killer tries to socialise with the victim. So did the killer plan to murder these people but continue to socialise with them? Once trust is gained, then the killer has got a way in. Phase 4, the capturing phase. As the name suggests, this is a phase in which the killer fully reveals his true intention. And this is where the killer knows exactly how this is going to take place. And in the Idaho 4 murders, that particular night was chosen. Why was that particular night chosen? And then you've got the murdering phase. At this point, the killer might have some kind of ritual that they perform beforehand or not. Not necessarily. It could be that they want to kill in a certain way. And in this case, obviously, this was a knife. An unusual way to kill 4 people. But it was done for a particular reason. It seems that this was done very quickly because there was other people in the house who didn't hear anything or may have heard something, but not enough to alert them to the fact that there was a quadruple murder going on upstairs. I don't think this killer tortured the victims. There's no evidence of SA. Now, whether there's some kind of sexual motive beyond SA, I don't know. Frequently, it's sexual motives. In this case, it doesn't seem that it was the primary motive. But this wasn't a prolonged attack. This was quick. Get in, get out. And that's maybe a small mercy to the families, knowing that they weren't tortured. It wasn't prolonged. It was as quick as it can be with a knife attack. Get in, get out as quickly as possible. And then you've got the totem phase. After the murder, the killer experiences a huge decline. Kind of wakes up from his fantasy. But they might have taken souvenirs or mementos. Sometimes an item of clothing, sometimes an item of jewellery, a piece of the body even. Like Jeffrey Dahmer was obscene about what he kept behind. Could have taken photos, videos. I don't know in this case whether anything was taken, whether it was that kind of killer, whether that was important to this killer. We don't know. And then finally, you've got the depression phase. And in this phase, the killer is depressed, come down from that killing high, and perhaps will vow for a period of time never to do it again. But yet this depression phase continues and they start to have fantasies about doing this again to make themselves feel high again. It could be, though, that during this depression phase that the killer confesses, that there's an emotional breakdown, and the killer confesses like Damien Bendel did. But it could be that their fantasies, in order to get themselves out of this depression phase, they start to fantasize about killing again. Or because they're still fueled by hate and they've got other targets that they want to take out of this world. And the whole thing then starts again. So, in my opinion, this person has to be taken off the streets. So I implore anybody who is suspicious about someone in their life who was in Moscow on the night of November 12th into November 13th, please search your conscience, and if you are suspicious, please give the police a tip. The tip that could break this case wide open. Be brave, be strong, and do it. You don't want blood on your hands for the next set of victims that this killer might choose. Do you? Seriously, do you? Be strong. Come forward. And to the killer, be strong. Come forward. You're going to get caught. Sooner or later, you're going to get caught. You might as well come forward and confess, and things will be better for you if you do. All right, guys, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. I've been Michelle. Hope you're well. I'll see you in the next video. It's goodbye from Miss Tillington and Miss Cassie Springer. Bye, guys.